Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. It's a great afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. And we're going to be talking some agriculture today. And so I'm really excited about this. Talking about something where there's some great opportunity and learning more about the Grimm Family Center and some of the unique, innovative projects on. So let's get to this. What is up today, May 10th, 2023? Well, today's going to be about opportunity, I think. It's oftentimes with all this disastrous winter storms we've been talking about and a lot of the great opportunities out there, the opportunities in our biggest sector throughout the San Joaquin Valley, and that is agriculture. So we're going to be talking about a really unique, interesting ag tech project that's going on right before our eyes right here in Kern County, and also talk about a little bit about the ag at CSUB, the Grimm Family Center. So agribusiness and ag tech are premiering today on Webinar Wednesday. We will provide an update on the relief from the disastrous winter storms as they continue. We'll have our economic corner, which is our look at what's going on in the economy. Debt ceiling question mark, a lot of what we can do with the economic corner today, and a lot of it off the fly, because of course, one of our guest speakers is the department head of the economics department for Cal State Bakersfield. So a lot of places to go today with that. And the debt ceiling, kind of a little more political than economical, but we'll see. Our capital corridor is going to it's going to add to our federal disaster relief options that are out there and provide those options. And everything seems to be moving along down the river rather swiftly, but it's not too dangerously at this point. Weather's holding up, it's all good, right? Our community calendar will spotlight some events and resources that are out there. We have some storm disaster options from the mild weather. And as always, we'll take your questions. So a question for either of our guests today, please go to the Q&A box. Go to that question box and put in any question that you might have. We will be taking questions toward the end of today's presentations. We do have two of them, so we will take your questions. Maureen Busherdang, our producer of Webinar Wednesday, will be adding to the chat, so feel free to grab that out of the chat and use it, those resources and other items. And today, no poll. No poll today. 2 speakers equals no poll. So there's my slide. Boy. So there's our Central California region. And do come to your SBDC if you need anything related to any type of business consulting, business advising, and along those areas, numerous different areas that we can assist you with. So let's start off today with our economic corner. And our economic corner is all about the debt limit right now. And the debt limit, which is what, maybe $31 trillion, which sounds like a lot of money to me. But I don't have to pay it back, do I? So, and the reasons I don't want to talk about the debt limit and the debt ceiling, I would rather talk about a debt floor than debt ceiling, but so that's one of the reasons I don't want to talk about it. And another thing is, once the political aspects of it ring out, we'll bring in our economist and we'll talk about what it is going to mean to our economy and how it's going to affect our small businesses. The other economic news that I will talk about is that inflation is under 5% for the first time in, I believe, about 10 months. Is that good? Well, we'll have to ask our economist, but I think it's better. I wouldn't necessarily say it's good because we're still at a fairly high annualized inflation rate. And longer term higher inflation is not something that I really want to see. So, but on our economic corner for today, that is enough for me. We'll try to extract a little bit of economic goodness out of Dr. Hegde later. So our capital corner that we have recapping federal assistance disaster. We have talked quite a bit about the FEMA. We've had FEMA declaration here in Kern County with the second storm that has come along. I believe we've talked about enough of that, and we'll give you enough resources to where we don't really need to cover that. And hopefully we won't be covered in more detail next few weeks or months with the snowfall coming down. So we'll leave it at that. Also, the Office of Disaster Assistance for SBA remains open with a couple of offices. We'll share that information. And as we've talked in the past a little bit about USDA and the rural development part of USDA, several components of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, even what we're getting into today, but we'll talk about some of their disaster relief efforts before we get into some of the programs that might intertwine with our agricultural topic of the day. Also, the Department of Treasury and IRS are in part of the federal disaster relief here with delayed options available for taxpayers in those affected areas as far as filing and paying your taxes. And then also one that we haven't talked about in the past has been the USDA Farm Service Agency and some of the other that are going on and some of the other ones with them. So let's talk a little bit about some of the programs that some of the other agencies of USDA that offer direct assistance to farmers and producers. So what they are offering right now through the Farm Service Agency are some type of emergency loans. And these are loans that are for severe storm and flood assistance. They have low interest rate loans that are available and declared and contiguous counties. These are various loan options with different programs available. You had to have a 30% loss to take advantage of these particular programs. And you must not be able to obtain a commercial loan. So you have to sign up within 8 months in order to go after that first actual emergency loan through the Farm Service Agency. So yeah, we talk about ag today, and our special guest are agriculture. We're going to get into the production ag aspect of it that we've missed before as far as the disaster. And continuing along, there's an emergency conservation program. And that is to rehabilitate farmland and also conservation structures, maybe some easements that have been impacted by natural disasters, and could include debris removal, land leveling, fence repair, etc. Irrigation systems that may have been damaged. There is a cost share aspect of that particular program with the agency factoring in a significant part of that particular aspect. So there's another emergency loan, and that one through the Emergency Conservation Program. There are programs that involve livestock, trees, crops, and vines. And some of those particular programs include a program called ELAP. Yes, that's correct, an acronym. You might get a few acronyms today. So the ELAP program is, I think, a program that's emergency and covers livestock, apiary, fish, grazing livestock. And what this program does very briefly is to provide benefits if you've had losses due to flooding to either livestock or dairy or even the feed cost. Now, you're going to want to contact either of the agencies that are applicable for this. It could be the Farm Production and Conservation. It could be the actual FSA, the Farm Service Agency, or some of the conservation agencies that are out there. But for that particular program for livestock, your gross income cannot be over $900,000. So if you've had some crops, trees, or bushes or vines that have been flooded, and more of that is happening, and it exceeds the normal 18% mortality rate, then you're potentially applicable up to a program that can cover up to 1,000 acres through the disaster program. Again, you're going to contact USDA for that. And lastly, I believe the program that we'll talk about for direct production and farming is a program called acronym NAP, N-A-P. So that particular program provides assistance for non-insurable crops. So if you've had crop you've lost with no insurance reimbursement, you can receive various sums of money to recapture those particular area. Again, reach out to USDA, including the Farm Service Agency, conservation, and production as well. So going back to our little slide that we continue to show on the declarated areas. And so we have the California declarations, there's 2 of them, and this is through SBA Office of Disaster Assistance. You'll see on the chart that there are various business loans, economic injury disaster loans, home loans for homeowners that have suffered a loss. Yes, this is the program that the U.S. Small Business Administration can and will make homeowners good if they suffer any particular loss. So do look at these particular programs, and if you can benefit from them, do go down to in either Kern counties and apply. You can apply at offices that are open at this particular time. Where offices in Kern County are at the Kern River Valley Senior Center, which is in Lake Isabella in the Kern River Valley. And that's open, as you see, Monday through Sunday. And also in Kern County at the McFarland Community Gymnasium. Pretty much the same hours, but those are the 2 locations where you can apply directly in person. And in Tulare County, you'll see that there are facilities in Visalia that can assist you in taking applications for those particular programs. We have had a program on USDA Rural Development. You'll remember Rural Development does a lot of other things with USDA, and is the community and rural development aspect of it. And they do have home programs in addition to business loans and others. Here's some contact information if you want more information. USDA Rural Development. There's our IRS, and there's information here. You can go online. And not only the Internal Revenue Service, but also the Franchise Tax Board has particular programs and entities. And what tools do we have here at the SBDC? Well, thank you for asking. A number of tools. We have our Live Planning Business Interactive tool. We have our national demographic information on market analysis. If you're looking to start a business or grow a business, it's always good to have that free database available to you. But the one that I like to talk about a little bit more lately has been our YouTube channel. And when you look at agriculture and you talk about ag, 275 webinars. We've done a few on agriculture, and we did have the one on USDA Rural Development just a couple of weeks back. And back in February, we had the Value Added Producers Grant. Yes, the Value Added Producers Grant. Great program. I just want to see more of our Kern County ag businesses maybe get involved with this, but we talked about that back in February. The USDA does a lot with the Small Business Innovation Research Grant, and who knows, maybe our first guest today will be able to access some of those particular funds sometime down the road. USDA Small Business Innovation Research Grants, money for specific projects. We talked about that also this year. Had an update on the Water, Energy, and Technology Center at CSUB. It's with CLA Pedersen, and also back in 2018, Tom Mendez was on with our ag and manufacturing tax incentives. And just to throw one in, you could franchise an ag business as well. So franchise your business. So those resources are on there. You can catch all of our webinars at CSUB YouTube page right there. For the community happenings, what's going on? Well, we're going to have a series of lectures and speaking and opportunity tours based on some of the content we're talking about in just a couple of minutes. And it's on the free air, actually carbon site enrichment program that others will be able to say a lot better than me, particularly in this state. So there will be a lecture that's going to be hosted by the Grimm Center for Agriculture on Thursday night, May 11th, on the campus of CSUB. Also with, as you can see, the University Extension on Friday, May 12th, where world-renowned Dr. Bruce Kimball, the godfather of this technology, will be there to present a lot of things that are happening. Save the date. The Economic Summit is coming. The Economic Summit is coming. 13th, just a few short days away on TV if you get KGET 17. Also, our last resource is we have our HR resource for business, and it is available to help you if you have any questions. I have not really gone through and vetted this. Knowing the fine entities that put it out in the organizations, I believe that it can be a great resource if you have any human resource questions or comments at this time. So let's bring in the first of our two special guests today, Brian Kolodji. Brian is a very passionate engineer, inventor, and president of Kolodji Corporation and Black Swan LLC. Mr. Kolodji is going to give us details on a project that he's talked with me about for the last few years. That is it's a very innovative project, very useful project for a lot of what's going on with carbon capture, being able to improve crop production with less water. Brian, great to have you here. Looking forward to this. Share your screen and take it away, please.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay. There we go. I appreciate that very kind introduction. This first slide is an introduction to what is called the global carbon cycle. It's actually based on high school chemistry. We know that there's a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere, as shown here. It seems to be a very large sink. That 800 number in that white 800 number in parentheses indicates a sink. That means it's like a storage of CO2 in the atmosphere. It's 800 gigatons. That's billion tons of CO2 stored in the atmosphere, and that is probably one of the smallest components. Actually, there's 1,000 times more oxygen and nitrogen in air. But anyhow, down here shows a much larger sink called the fossil pool, which is 10,000 tons of CO2. But we're focusing on how to solve a problem here with the atmosphere, because this is what neutrality and climate change and everything that you hear a lot about. It's a very contemporary topic. We've got to reduce this 800 down. It's going up. It'll be 900 gigatons here. Probably in less than 3 or 4 years, and it just keeps going up and up and up. It's actually accelerating still. And one of the solutions we have is look at how photosynthesis transfers of the 800. It transfers 120 of those gigatons into trees, another sink. So this yellow means it's transferring from atmosphere into another atmospheric sink into another sink, which is the plant biomass sink. And it's not as big as atmosphere, but it's 550, still substantial, not as big as the soil or the fossil fuels. But the point is this 3 here is the contribution of human CO2 produced that is being absorbed versus 60. We need to actually absorb 60. There's the problem. See, with 60 coming from fossil fuels and power plants and industry, the photosynthesis isn't able to keep up anymore. And so this number is getting higher, and this number is actually dropping. So the solution is with a technology, a direct air capture technology called that is of the category FACE, which has been around for almost 50 years now. That's been patented, and it's called now an FGXB FACE technology. We'll go into what that is in more detail later. But what this does is it takes the fossil fuel produced, power plant produced CO2 and creates this new flux and sends 60 gigatons instead of miles into the atmosphere, drops it directly into the trees, and then causes this to go up from 550 to 610. Now notice this went up from 550 And this went down from 800. And that's where the solution lies now, in that we're transferring the CO2 from the atmosphere into the trees and create a higher biomass production. So, that's the beauty of this new technology, and it's based upon a science that we learned in high school. I know everybody is kind of afraid of chemistry, but this is pretty interesting. They call it a cycle for a reason. But a fact that many people don't know is that 95% of a plant's growth is dependent upon this very small quantity of CO2 in the atmosphere, and there's only 400 parts per million. It's such a small quantity, but believe it or not, without that nutrient, we wouldn't be, and sunlight, and of course the water that is more plentiful, we wouldn't, without this natural photosynthesis, we would not have this. This is basically what the tree is right here. This is called a carbohydrate. And when this takes place, it actually produces oxygen that helps us breathe. Now, this respiration is, this chemistry is actually reversed and makes a cycle. So notice that there's oxygen and a carbohydrate here, which is the fuel. Here, there's oxygen on the other side of the equation, and it produces CO2 and water, which is, it's a cycle. You see how this goes back when we naturally respire CO2 and water by burning the carbohydrates in our body. But unfortunately, this form of natural respiration is way overwhelmed by the 60 gigatons I showed to you on the previous slide from industrial respiration. Notice that the chemistry is the same: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, fossil fuel produces CO2 and water. And this actually, the composition of our breath is about the same composition as a stat gas off a power plant. So what we do is we take that clean stat gas off of a power plant, we spike the trees, and we send the CO2 into a biosphere, and we raise that 400 that is natural to about 600 and 1,000. And guess what? We get a minimum 50% increased agricultural production and biomass production. And that allows for double the agricultural production profit. Big deal here in Kern County, the crown jewel of the world's agricultural production. So this technology is based upon a crop carbon dioxide enrichment, which has been around and commercialized for over 100 years, using fit-for-purpose CO2 generation from combustion of fossil fuels. So people have been doing this, producing vegetables primarily. But over the last 40 years, FACE, which is known as free air carbon dioxide enrichment research, was done by USDA and USDOE. And that means they're not using enclosures now. They're not spending all that money to get a greenhouse. They're just sending the CO2 directly into the forest, directly into almond trees or citrus trees. And the first FACE apparatus was developed by Brookhaven National Laboratory for free air carbon dioxide. And it was very, very costly to purchase and handle the pure CO2 that they fed into this device. And the capital and operating cost was about $2 to $3 million per acre for agriculture. Well, I've been blessed. God gave a gift to me here, and I patented this technology called FGXB, which stands for flue gas extraction and biosequestration. So what it does is it, instead of building a fit-for-purpose power plant, I take an existing power plant and I take this CO2 that's being puked out, millions of tons, billions of tons by power plants, and I extract it. It's freely available, and I send it into the trees and almond trees primarily. We've been operating since 2018 in multiple orchards here in Kern County, and we've been finding that we can get circa $1,000 per acre. At circa $1,000 per acre cost, we can actually make another $2,000 to $3,000 in these orchards. So there's a huge rate of return. I mean, a very short rate of return. So Dr. Bruce Kimball is going to give more information. He's the worldwide expert on this. He's been with USDA forever, and he's got a company called. He's the president of the Greenleaf Group, and he has over 300 publications. He's an amazing, inspirational gentleman, and he's going to be speaking tomorrow at Cal State in the classroom at 5:30 p.m. And on Friday, as mentioned by our illustrious Mr. Bearden, at 8 a.m. That's the 12th, that very next day. That's just in a couple of days. at the University of California Co-op Extension in Kern County here at 1031 Mount Vernon. Take that address down and be there. And on that same day, come and enjoy a barbecue at the commercial scale facility, which is in Wasco, about a 15 to 20-minute drive away, across from PAGHAC Management's office at 29341 Kimberlina Road. That's it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Hey, Brian,
Yes,
let's talk just a little bit about, the process, what you do and what you've done so far, because I think it's been really instrumental in being able to your process of going out and then taking the carbon, blowing it on the trees, the results that you have found, and the fact that repeatably you not only increased yield, but you also save water. And until a couple of months ago, that was a big deal.
That's the most amazing thing about this technology. This science has been around again in greenhouses, and only in the last 50 years have they really been utilizing it without greenhouses. And Dr. Kimball has published an article, a very interesting article that got my attention. And he used seedlings for orange trees, and in these seedlings, and he grew them for 17 years, so they were not mature. They didn't produce any oranges for the first 5 years or so. And then they produced lots of oranges in the last 12 years. And in fact, what was most remarkable was, on average, even when you'd consider the non-production of the oranges, he was able to get a 70% average increase in the citrus crop. And in 3 of the 4 years, 3 of the 12 producing mature years, he actually tripled the citrus production in 3 of the low producing years. And in the peak years, he was actually able to double. So 70% is the average. But if you ignore the first 5 years where it's not producing, he actually shows several years where he doubled and tripled. And the lowest year with carbon enrichment was higher than the highest year without it. And on top of that, he used less water, average of about 10% less water than the guys who were not having carbon rich. So it's just like, pinch yourself. Is this real? This is actually been proven.
Brian, on Friday, you're going to have a lecture and tour out in Wasco, but
actually, yeah, Dr. Kimball is going to be giving a lecture.
But let's talk about what
technology.
So you'll be showing off the technology, and that'll be your next test plot of this using this technology. What do you hope to learn from this year's test? Well,
we've been doing this for 3 years as funded by the California Department of Food and Agriculture out of Mr. Desange, Project Desange's orchard. We had a sweep grant, and thanks to your help, I was able to get that grant with CSUB, SBDC's support. And also with Vince Fong, I have to shout out to him. So Karen Ross, the secretary over there, and her team gave us $100,000. And with that, we couldn't even spend all that money because our technology is so cost effective. We only spent 25 of it. And we were able to run up just for, we weren't able to run for full seasons. Again, we're not trying to prove the increased yield. That's been proven already. What we're trying to do is prove that we actually able to cover the trees with the right amount of concentration. And that was highly successful, as published by Dr. Kimball and presented by Dr. Marsh at the last year's Agronomy Society of American Society of Agronomy meeting. So we were actually able to, and that was at the time the world's largest space facility, bigger than anything even the government got. Now we're doing a facility that's 100 times larger here in Wasco that we're going to show off here on Friday.
Yeah, and for me, in talking with you about this project for a few years now, it's always made sense. But for me, it's always been about the scalability of it. And now in Kern County, we're about carbon business parks and other areas where there's going to be maybe large concentrations of carbon that are going to be available, that are going to be maybe adjacent to agricultural lands. And the scalability of this is now all of a sudden becoming an issue and becoming a real possibility, and something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, we're more scalable than any other capture technology, any form of capture technology. And on top of that, we're green. We are truly green. we actually take the CO2 and drop the CO2 and have no other technology can remove CO2 directly from the environment like our technology does. All the other technologies simply slow the acceleration. They don't drop it. They don't even get zero. And so that's what the big, and we are scalable. Just on 10% of the almond crop, we can actually achieve the Governor Newsom's goal of carbon neutrality for using natural working lands. And we're going to do it in half the time that he's mandated by his executive orders, and also as mandated in CARB's scoping plan, the California Resource Board scoping plan. So we can accelerate the removal of carbon and make a profit.
Great.
Thank you for this time. I'm very grateful, Kelly, for you showcasing this talent from Dr. Kimball and also my technology. Thank you very much. Kolodji Corp.
Okay, great to get this out, introduce it. Thanks, Brian. And so that brings us to our next individual, Dr. Aaron Hegde, who I get to now introduce out his introduction slide. And Dr. Hegde is the department chair of the economics department. He's been on Webinar Wednesday a couple of times now. He's turning into an old veteran. And last time, obviously talking about the economy, but as the co-director of the Grimm Family Business for Agricultural Business, he has a lot to talk about. And it's really, I think, an interesting discussion that we can get going with some of the things that are happening in the community in agriculture, many of the things that are happening with students and small businesses, and the new Grimm Center coming in online, and the fine work that Dr. Hegde is given and doing. So tell us more about the Grimm Center for Agricultural Business. Aaron, thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Kelly. So since you said I'm a veteran, do I get any benefits for being a veteran on this? The Grimm Family Center for Ag Business was started a couple of years ago as a result of a generous, very generous donation from the Grimm family. And to date, it's been the largest donation that the university has received. And the goal for that donation was to establish a center that would kind of be a conduit for agricultural activity in Kern County and with the university. So be the nexus of those two things, and really to promote agriculture and also to support the agricultural business program that we have at the university that we've had now for about 7-8 years. So the way the center does these things, will do these things and going forward also, is through three major foci. A lecture series, some student success initiatives, and then applied research and community engagement. The lecture series are basically about monthly on various topics, especially topics of relevance in agriculture. And then we also plan to have two lecture series in a year of some, like a large event with some really recognizable names and such. With the student success initiatives, it goes everywhere from helping within the classroom, make some classroom connection, experiential learning or internships and such, engaging the students with agriculture and other industry, the agriculture industry, and with the school. One of the things we'll be doing is what we call an Ag Ambassador program, where the students will be going out to their high school and talking about their experience at Cal State ag business and such, as well as the students who come here having like a bridge program so that they can easily get involved with the university. And for a lot of the students, they don't have a whole lot of experience with college and such. So whether they're transfer or incoming freshmen, it's help set up a network to get them through the program, as well as collaborating with our P through 12 system. So currently, the person taking the lead for that is our director of the Ag Business Program, Dr. John Deal. The lecture series, the co-director, Caetano Urias, is taking the lead on that. And then we also have the Ag Business Program has had a career fair for the last 8 or 9 years, and we've had the pause during the pandemic, so we'll start it up again in the fall. And the career fair is where we get various U.S. Department of Agriculture agencies, as well as private ag companies, and we get 200-300 students kind of going through, so where they can do internships and look for jobs and such. And then the last bit that we do is, the last leg of the stool, is like applied research and community engagement. So we get students involved in research. So we've got about 6 students that'll be doing research in this coming year with faculty from across disciplines. So in biology, in history, political science, and economics. And what they'll be doing is something related to the ag industry or the food industry in general. So this way, students learn about the ag industry, get interested hopefully in it, and maybe can consider pursuing it as a career. We also will be doing publications, so look out for those later on coming this year. A journal that will be out twice a year, and then a newsletter that will be out about 4 times a year. And also we're working on trying to get a lab, a food safety lab, just trying to pin down the location. And once we have that, that'll be incorporated into our food safety class that's taught by the co-director, Mr. Urias. And students will be able to get experience in the food safety lab, as well as maybe we can get engaged with the community in doing some kind of testing and such. And finally, the last thing that under this category we'll be doing is holding conferences and symposia. So in November, we'll have a student symposia where the student research that I was just talking about earlier, they'll be presenting their results, their project. So that's how the Grimm Family Center for Ag Business will be engaged with the community and even just these kinds of things. So tomorrow, Brian and Dr. Kimball will be coming to one of our classes. It's actually the food safety class. And those of you who are on campus or would like to come to the class, it's in the Business Development Center, the B area of that in room 154 from 5:30 to 6:45. And then we also hope to have maybe another conference sometime in the fall. And then when we do have that, we'll be sure to send out the announcements on that. So that's a brief update on the Grimm Family Center for Ag Business. And anything else you'd like me to add on that, Kelly?
Oh, you can add a lot of stuff. We can have you add stuff all day long. But, let me just ask you a few questions and a little more discussion on this. First of all, this is, I think, great for the community, and I'm really excited because I really think that with the Ag Center and also with the SBDC, I think we can get a lot of really good synergies, and we really need to be doing more in agriculture. So we're excited to be working together on this. And also, I saw recently CSUB, The Economist, many of the people you mentioned were involved in a conference in Fresno, and it was a climate-related conference, I believe, and I don't want to make this all about climate, but can you tell us a little bit about that event and maybe some of the things that you presented that were of value?
Sure. So this was an event put on by an organization called Climate Now, and they've also collaborated with CSUB and last month put on a thing on carbon sequestration as well. So they're a national group, and this was the first such event that they had where they wanted to look at the future of agriculture in California given climate change. So they had various panels from, I think they had like the Smart Farm folks from UC Merced and a few others. And the CSUB panel was around the business and economics of agriculture in the Valley. So along with myself, and as I mentioned, John Deal, we had Caetano Urias, and we also had a couple other folks. One of them who also teaches for our ag business program, Abe Padilla, And so the thing we were focused on is what would the future look like? I mean, so obviously there are technological innovations that are taking place, labor saving, as well as resource saving, conserving resources in terms of watering and things like that. Patterns changing. So one of the things that was mentioned was that maybe the types of crops we plant here in the Central Valley might change in the future, or with regulations and such, and the way so what we produce might look differently, and as a result, a good portion of our products in Kern County agriculture are exported outside the U.S., and so that relationship might change. There were other things that the conference are really also focused on, the technical side of ag. That wasn't our focus, even though some of us kind of mentioned it. Our focus was really on the business side of things, and of course, with Sigma and other things, water conservation becomes a big issue as well, and the costs of doing business, whether it's labor, resources, or any of those things, that will look substantially different. And so one of the things that CSUB is doing to kind of help towards that is we're training a lot of students in the ag business program with the kind of skill sets that they would need for the future of agriculture, and doing a lot of data analysis, for instance, and trying to see every which way they can save a penny and make more pennies and things like that, because that's really ultimately what it will come down to is competition is going to be so tight that the margins will be small. And so the more you can do in terms of data to cut down on expensive and maybe maximize revenue, then the best thing for those businesses.
Great. Hey, we have a question. The question is, can you give us the location on campus of tomorrow night's event again?
Yes, it's in the BDC building, which is the Business Development Center buildings. It's called Building B, which is the classroom area, and it's in room 154 in that.
Okay, so that that would be in the back part of the campus, and parking. You need to get your parking permit.
Right, when you come into the campus.
But and that will be 5:30.
Yes.
Okay, great. Dr. Hegde, anything else you want to add on agriculture before I bring up the economy?
Well, they will be tied together, because when you talk about the economy, you have to talk about agriculture. When you talk about the agriculture, you have to talk about the economy. So interesting numbers came out. CPI numbers, which tells us about inflation, came out earlier today, and the inflation rate is 4.9% compared to last year. So that's a decline from 5.1%, which is what it was in April. So the good news is the price increases is slowing down. I mean, the prices aren't necessarily coming down. It's just that the increase is slowing down. And if you look at the breakdown of that particular instance of what it is that is causing these increases, you see that it's food is still contributing to it, although the food prices are coming down. And one of the big drivers of the lower inflation rate is actually energy, specifically gasoline prices. Although I think the last couple of days it went up a little bit, but over this last few months, price of gasoline is coming down a lot. So the energy prices are coming down a lot. Sorry, it seems like there's construction outside. I don't know if you hear that, but so the prices are coming down, but probably not at the rate that people would like to. So maybe some of us are getting used to the higher prices and hoping that it maybe will come down. But as you see travel increase in the summer, people driving more, the gas price will probably start to inch up. But then by the end of the year, as the economy slows down, and then we are seeing signs of the economy slowing down as well. I think on Friday, we're going to get the producer price index that tells us a little bit more about the economy. But you see the housing starts are slowing down, and as not as many people are putting their house on sale. Part of it is because if you sell the house, then you have to get another house with high interest rate, and maybe people don't want to do that. So the new listings are decreasing compared to months past. And the existing listing, there's not a whole lot of activity. So the housing prices are falling. And the other thing you'll see is that's included in the CPI is rent. So rents, there's a lag because you have contracts for your rent once a year. And so as those come due, you'll see maybe lowering of the price. And the other thing dealing with food or agriculture is people are starting to go out to eat more. So the increase in prices of food away from home is actually increasing. And if you drill it down further, those specific increases are in these, what they call the limited service restaurants. So like your fast food and those kinds of places that probably have to increase their prices just because labor prices are going up and input costs are going up.
Where are interest rates going? Last week on Webinar Wednesday, I reported that after a discussion with you that you thought they would raise interest rates 25 basis points or a quarter of a point. That actually happened. Then it was reported that many people thought that interest rate increases were going to be done for a while. However, with a discussion with you, if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you think that they might raise another quarter of a point next month.
You know, I will say, preface this by, I am an economist, and I don't know what, so take that with a grain of salt, because our forecasting abilities, you know, let's just, so take that with a grain of salt, but I think there's one more quarter percent increase or 25 basis point. Just looking at what the Fed chairman had said is I don't think they're done raising because part of it, I don't think they'll cut the rates. I know some people are saying they'll cut the rates but the general consensus, at least Chair Powell consensus, is that they wouldn't mind if the economy slowed down a little more, but what they don't want to do is see the inflation go back up. It won't go up down to 2% by the end of the year, but it might go down to like 3.5%. So for that, and also you have to remember that these interest rate hikes and stuff, there's a lag. So it takes time. So now we're starting to see some of the effects. So I don't think they will slow down. I think they may have one more raise in them.
It sounds like you could be hedging there, Dr. Hegde.
That's right.
So maybe what you're suggesting is I get a consensus of the entire economic team at CSUB on what they think about rates. And so I should bring in maybe Nyakunde Macheka or Dr. Ryan or the Real Deal John Deal and find out from them and get a consensus of this, correct?
But you know what they say, right? If you lay an economist end to end, you will still not reach a consensus. So,
oh, didn't know that.
Sorry, that's a bad economist joke.
I like that one though, because I like that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see any further questions.
Oh, I saw in the chat, address Sigma restrictions. Yeah, I think, so Sigma is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And as part of that, they've broken down all the water agencies into groundwater management basins and things like that. And they have to come up with plans that the idea behind it being is sustainable because the rate at which the groundwater is being withdrawn is really high and it's increasing. So they want some plan to make it sustainable. And so one of the things obviously is in terms of allotment rights and stuff like that. But innovation is absolutely a thing that smaller farmers can do. And the USDA has an agency that our students work with called the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And they have a lot of grant programs where producers can apply to conserve resources such as water. And a lot of the things that can be funded are things like, instead of doing flooding for your plants and stuff, is to switch to drip irrigation or micro irrigation. And the NRCS will look at a farm and an operation and see if there are any other resource concerns, whether it's air, water, or soil, or those kinds of things, and then help with some best management practices and help fund some of that. So there are, so that would be and there's a lot of other innovative agriculture water saving technologies out there. And I think some of them may even have been on this webinar.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, anything else you'd like?
No, just that, thank you for having me here. And this is a great webinar. And I see it's what, the 275th one, is it?
I'm talking about agriculture. Brian, would you like to come in and join us and for any final comments? Any final questions that you might have? Anything?
Well, I want to give a shout out also to Brian Marsh, if I may, Dr. Brian Marsh
Please,
at the University of California. He's one of the co-authors with Dr. Kimball and also Project Assange, but I haven't even mentioned Ben Schroeder, who is the Wasco Orchard owner. And I haven't mentioned Pack Ag Management, who's also been very kind in giving us attention. And you mentioned scalability, Kelly. If I may address that briefly, with this technology, in my opinion, with food being such a big market, have the potential of actually getting carbon neutrality solely with this technology of producing food from CO2. I want to emphasize that. And just to give you a scope of the interest, we started out with just a few acres, a handful, and then we went up to 50, applying it. Then we went up to 300, then 3,000, and now there's potential for going over 20,000 in less than a year, 2 years possibly. And then if we could achieve the goal of almost 200,000 acres of almonds, of which there are over 1 million acres of almonds in California, we can actually sustainably we would be the world's largest carbon capture facility and carbon capture anywhere, and making food doing it. Thank you for this opportunity, Kelly. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you, sir.
Hey, well, it was fun. Appreciate both of you and appreciate both of you being on here today. Brian Kolodji, Black Swan LLC, Kolodji Corporation, going to continue to do that with carbon. Dr. Aaron Hegde, nice to see you again, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
That's it. We'll be back next week. We'll be back for number 276. And thank you both for joining us. Everybody out there, have a great week. Thank you so much.
I have a question for you, Kelly.
A good one. Bye-bye, everyone. Oh, you're going to hit me with a question on my slide?
Well, I was just going to say, since the 300th is coming up, are you going to do, are you going syndicated? What are you doing for the 300th?
I'm going to probably take a nap. So let me try this again. So for Dr. Aaron Hegde and Brian Kolodji, our producer, Maureen Busherding, everybody have a great week out there. Goodbye, everybody.